we are talking about the new preschool program today, all right? The new cycle program that includes K4 and 5 in this beautiful new program. And this first session, we're really going to talk about early childhood development, just so that we start to get aligned together, and that all our ducks are going in the same direction across the province. Okay, so I found Donna Skea. We hadn't really known each other much, and then I found her through LinkedIn, and we have been like best friends ever since. We've been having wonderful conversations about preschool and the beauty of the program. So today we're just going to really explore that, and Donna's going to kind of talk a little bit about the fundamentals and kind of that preschool mindset that we all need to enrich a little bit, henceforth the name. Donna has a consulting firm called the Infinite Educator, where she does support our youngest learners and their educators along their process. She is an early childhood professor at Vanier College. And we were just talking about this cool lab she has, this kindergarten lab, where you can actually go and observe kids in a kindergarten setting and analyze, discuss, and exchange. And a Concordia graduate. So many of the same paths that we've all gone through. She's very versed in the Quebec program. And I want to just say thank you, Donna, for coming and sharing with us today. So I will pass it over to you. Again, any questions you might have, throw in that chat, and we will look at them at the end. Thanks, Donna.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris, for that intro. I really do appreciate it. And I do appreciate Learn Quebec and the Play Committee for inviting me here to talk to all of you about early childhood education, child development, the fundamentals of preschool, the pre-K, K program. I'm really looking forward in this hour to really talk to you and sort of start the dialogue. I don't think we're going to get a lot of solutions this time around, but I think we're going to start the dialogue where you know, I'm going to get people thinking. That's my intent. My intent is to get people thinking about early childhood, about pre-K and kindergarten, and how we can do what's best for that age group. So like Chris said, I am a Concordia graduate. I have an MA in child studies. I'm also a qualified early childhood educator and spent 10 years of my life in and out a variety of daycares in Montreal, working with everything from toddlers all the way up to 4-year-olds. Loved my job, but then got hired at Vanier 19 years ago, and I'm now a tenured professor teaching the next generation of educators. And a lot of our students actually do go on to become elementary school teachers, go on to Concordia and McGill. I'm also a lifelong learner and very, very passionate about this field of early childhood. I think as an educator, as a teacher of early childhood, I see the foundation. I see how important it is that we start our children off in a particularly positive way, in an exciting way. And they're so great to hang out with a 4-year-old. If you've ever had to have a conversation with a 4-year-old, they're fantastic. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? So that's a little bit about who I am and what I bring to this workshop, and hopefully we can have a dialogue a little bit after about all of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. So just to tell you what's on the agenda, so we've already had our welcome, and I want to talk a little bit about shifting the mindset. You're going to notice in my workshop that the language might be a little bit different. The language that you may know from school, or that maybe you use in your schools and your classrooms, may be a little bit different than the language that we use in early childhood. So, but it's all the same thing. It's just a mindset, and the language is different. So just so you know that there will be a shifting of your mindset in terms of language and how we look at teaching children at this age. We're going to talk about what is developmentally appropriate practice, which is very key to pre-K and kindergarten. Of course, you cannot talk about pre-K and kindergarten without the importance of play, and I will get into why play is so important at this age. Being an intentional educator, setting up your classroom in a particular way, being mindful about what you are doing in every aspect of your day with the children, being intentional in your curriculum, being intentional in how you set up your activities. And also, we're going to talk about creating a community of learners and teaching to development and learning. So this is a big agenda for 1 hour. But I'm going to do my best to try and get you through as much information as I can. So let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about an early childhood preschool mindset. When we talk about early childhood, when we talk about preschool, we talk about the language of early childhood. We talk about developmentally appropriate practice. We talk about child-centered teaching. So we're teaching with the child. The child is engaged, and it's as engaged in active, meaningful experiences. Remember, educators teach beside the child. We're not teaching to the children, we're teaching beside them. We scaffold, we facilitate, and we prompt children's learning when we talk about the preschool mindset. And that educators provide an environment and curriculum that is just challenging enough that the children are engaged and motivated to learn. You may know this as the zone of the proximal development, right? We've talked a lot about that when they talk about that in the Quebec program. This is how we set up our environment. It's got to be a little bit challenging. It's got to be engaging. It has to be hands-on. Very important when we talk about building on this mindset and this preschool environment in which the children are in and settled and learning. So it's very important that we do that. So let's talk a little bit about developmentally appropriate practice. There are 3 core main considerations that we have to look at when we talk about developmentally appropriate practice. First one is commonality. Commonality in the fact that we look at what is the current research in early childhood, as well as recognizing and understanding the processes of child development. Children all go through the same kind of process, not necessarily at the same time, but the development is there and they're moving through that. What is the commonality there, right? So we have to understand child development. We have to understand what is the current research. There's lots and lots of new research coming out about 0 to 5, particularly in the neurosciences, which I will bring up a little bit as well. Oh, we good? Okay. The second one we're going to talk a little bit about is individuality. The children that come to us, they come to us with their own stories, right? Their own experiences, their own unique development. And we as early childhood educators have to understand that within the context of their family, of their community, of their culture. Everybody is coming into your classroom as an individual. And so that's part of developmentally appropriate practice as well. Every child is going to be different. And how can we get them to where they need to be, each and every one of them? And we also have to look in, especially now, at the context of our classroom, of the children, of what they're bringing to our classroom in terms of perhaps how diverse they are, understand the context of their experience, in terms of their social identities, in terms of their race, their gender, their language. And so what context are they coming into the classroom? And in that context, how can we, in a positive, appropriate way, help them to be successful at school? So when we consider all of these core things, all of these core considerations have to be applied to our decision making. Applied to the aspects of an educator's decision making to foster each child's optimal development and learning. Very important that we think about these things in terms of, what is appropriate? How do we bring to our classroom all of the stuff that the children need, whether it is through their child development, whether it's through their individual needs, and where are they coming in terms of their context. It is also important to have a good understanding of child development and learning. What can a 4-year-old do? What can a 5-year-old do? We need to understand what is the baseline that we have to look at in terms of what each age group can do. We also have to look at the developmental domains, as I have pictured here on the screen, and understand how each of those domains interact and how they support each other. We have to recognize that educators need to meet children where they are. And we have to create a play-based curriculum that considers the interests of the children. And we have to think about establishing a community of learners in our classrooms. How do we support all of that to create a developmentally appropriate practice in our pre-K and RK classrooms? All right. So why is play important? We've talked about, I know in the new Quebec program, they talk a lot about free play and opening it up to allowing children to have more opportunities for free play. Well, free play is kind of bad marketing when it comes to that idea. It's not really free play, it's learning through play and giving children the opportunity to really expand on ideas and give them opportunities to try all kinds of different things with enough time to follow through. So what is happening in the process of play? And one of the things that is really important is that we have to recognize that when children are given opportunities to play in a yes-rich environment, they are learning to make decisions on their own. And when I mean yes-rich environment, I mean a classroom where children can walk in and everything is at their exposure. Everything is there for them to take. They need to have that opportunity to have a yes experience. Yes, you can go play in the blocks. Yes, you can go in the dramatic play. Yes, you can take out a board game. Yes, you can take out all the art and the scissors and the glue and the paint. They need to have those opportunities because they need to learn to make decisions on their own. We start small with children, right? We need to have them to have that opportunity to make decisions. It could be as simple as who they're going to play with that day. It could be what materials that they need. But the brain science research shows that when a child makes a decision and is able to push away all the other stuff, because when you go into a classroom as a 4-year-old, there's a lot of stuff for them to make that decision. So that if they can push away all the other distractions, they're actually building on their executive function. To make a choice, to go into the blocks, to go into the dramatic play, to go into the art area, to go look at a book for 5 minutes, helps children to focus their attention on one thing at a time. Now, for those of you who know what happens in cycle 1 and cycle 2, the more children have these skills to be able to focus in, the more opportunity they will be successful later on in school because they can focus. They can take away all of the distractions. They can figure out what is important and what is the stuff that they can push away. So we need to give children the opportunities to decide what it is that they want to do and make choices to be able to go into those areas and to play and to follow through with all of those kinds of materials. So I think, oops, I'm not sure why my thing's not moving. Okay. Also, the importance of play when we talk about authentic opportunities. Children need to have authentic hands-on opportunities to develop their physical competencies, to make sense of the world, and to be able to interact with others. They need to be able to express and control their emotions, develop problem-solving skills, and practice emerging skills. So we need to be able to set up our environments, our activities, our curriculum, our experiences, so that they are authentic, that they make sense to children, that they are hands-on, that they're tangible, and that we are able to provide children. We all know children are multiple intelligences, right? They all have different ways of learning. So we need to be able to set up our environment in a particular way that allows different types of learners to learn the same thing. That creates an authentic opportunity for children to learn. And this is done very easily through play. The other thing about play-based opportunities, The other thing about play-based opportunities is that children are driven by curiosity. Play promotes joyful learning and content knowledge across subject areas. The brain science research states that for children to remember information, there must be positive emotions attached to learning. So we have to get children excited about play and to learn new things and to have opportunities to try and to negotiate and to problem solve and to figure things out. And once they are challenged and are able to move forward a little bit, you see pride, you see self-confidence, you see self-worth, and that makes children come back for more. The brain science says there's a link between children who have a positive emotional connection to their learning and how much they remember what they learned. So we have to remember that making these experiences exciting, joyful, hands-on learning makes children come back for more. We want them to say, let's do it again. I like that. Let's try something else. And educators can intentionally set up play-based environments that provide children with choices and joyful experiences to bring them back for more. Children want to try those things. And repetition is actually a very, very good thing. The more that they repeat, the more that they can figure out the next little problem, the next little thing. And the longer that they repeat something, the more it sticks. If anybody ever got to sit there and watch Frozen 472 times with their kids and know all the songs, that's a good example of repetition. They want that kind of information. They need that kind of information to keep going over and over again. So creating and being intentional in how we set up these environments helps children be excited about learning. And that's what we want. That's the whole point of it, right? So to do that, we need to become an intentional educator. In everything that an educator does, they are purposeful and thoughtful. An educator understands the why or the purpose behind every action that he or she does, particularly when creating the environment. When educators go into their classroom and they look around, it's really important for them to think about what are their goals? What are their objectives? What is it that you want the children to learn now, or let's say in September, versus what maybe you want them to learn now? Maybe in September, you were thinking about, okay, well, how can I get the children to make friends? Or how can I work on fine motor skills? Or how can I work on, turn taking? So let's say you are thinking about wanting to work on children's fine motor skills. I particularly picked this picture because I think it's important to see there's opportunity everywhere in your environment to work on every developmental domain. If you're thinking about, fine motor skills, when we think about fine motor skills, we see children being able to do this. And so children need to be able to have the pincer grasp to be able to hold a pencil. Now, not all 3 and 4-year-olds are capable of doing that, but we can set up our environment thinking, okay, that's one of the goals that I want to have. So maybe you want to have in your art area smaller paintbrushes that look similar to pencils. Maybe you want to put small cars into your block area, because then children have to do this, which also helps them work on their fine motor skills. Maybe fine motor skills aren't an issue. Maybe now you want to move on and it's February, you're looking for something new. Maybe you want to move on to, I don't know, let's say math. Maybe in your block corner, you decided that you want to have some authentic math knowledge going on. Why not bring in measuring tapes and notebooks and pencils and things that children can use to find out how long or how high their blocks are? You going in as the intentional educator going, okay, well, I want to talk about math when I go into the block area with them. That's part of the curriculum that I want to talk about. So you go in and say to them, okay, well, how tall is yours? Or how far did your measuring tape go? And is your block structure less than or greater than your friend's block structure? There's so many ways that we can intentionally meet our objectives just by how we set up the environment, how we consider the curriculum, and how we ask open-ended questions and engage in the learning process with the children. I always tell my students that it's important to sort of wonder out loud. How can we wonder out loud when we are interacting with children? I wonder why that happened. I wonder what would happen if. I wonder, And this gets children really thinking and engaged. And when you wonder out loud, so do children. And they start thinking about things. Well, what happens if we do this? And what happens if we do that? Well, let's try it. So free play is not really free play, but it's a great opportunity for children to explore, to be curious, to take things out, and to be able to explore and problem solve and share with their friends and interact and enter into play in appropriate ways. And all of this is because you have been intentional in how you have set up your environment, your curriculum, and the language that you have used with the children, so that you can create all of these things, so that you are meeting your objectives, you are meeting your goals for that part of the school year, just by the way that you have intentionally set up all of those things. So there's so many different ways that we can look at how to create this environment so that there is constant learning happening and engagement that is taking place. And so I think it's really important that we think about how we're going to set up all of our stuff, all of our activities, all of our environment, and how we're going to ask the right questions and wonder out loud. So the other thing that is really important and that we talk a lot about in the early childhood education program is creating a community of learners. One of the things that we try to get across to educators is that it's not just about teaching, not just about the teacher. It's about the entire community, the children that are in the classroom. And to understand that educators need to build effective relationships with each child, but they also need to build effective relationships among the children. And that the children bring so much richness to your classroom. It doesn't always have to be about you as the teacher, but really it's about the children and what they are learning. So recognizing that each member of the community is valued by the others. And I just want to share a story with you. I've been given permission by Chris to sort of deviate a little bit, but I want to share my airplane story. And it lends itself to the idea of creating a community of learners. I was working at a daycare in Montreal, and I was working with older 3s and 4-year-olds. And one day, this little boy, Simon, comes over to the art table. He never comes to the art table, but he came to the art table today. And he made the most amazing paper airplane, like just the most amazing paper airplane. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was incredible. And so he makes it and off he goes, and he starts throwing it around the classroom. Well, let me tell you, all of the children came running to me and were like, Donna, please make us a paper airplane. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know how. I said, you need to go ask Simon. So of course, they all run to Simon. Simon, can you help me, please? So he comes back to the art table and he starts showing all of these children how to do a paper airplane. It was amazing. He was facilitating, he was scaffolding, he was so patient, he was modeling all of these great behaviors. And as this was going on, and I'm sitting there watching, I'm watching Simon's cup fill up. He had so much pride and self-worth and self-esteem that he knew something that I didn't even know, and that he was showing his friends how to do this. I had children who never come to the art table show up at the art table. I had children who never played together play together. All because Simon knew how to make this really cool paper airplane. And when I look back on that moment, I look back on and reflect on that situation. That was one of my best teaching moments ever. And it had absolutely nothing to do with me. We need to give that opportunity to children who know things, and they know a lot of stuff. Give them the opportunity to make the paper airplanes, to tell us about the dinosaurs. They may know tons of stuff about airplanes or I don't know, trucks or whatever it is, and bring that into the classroom. It's all good. It's all part of the learning. And I have so many stories of how children were able to get other children to do stuff that adults were not able to do. So we need to create this community and have some sort of, I don't want to say faith, but faith in the children and their knowledge and their understanding of what they know and being able to share it. It was a wonderful day, the airplanes, and it went on for 3 days. 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There were paper airplanes all over my classroom, and children coming and decorating them, bringing them home, and talking about these paper airplanes. It had nothing to do with the curriculum or the agenda that I had set up at all. But so much learning took place in those 3 days. So we need to give children the opportunity to do that. And, and just the residual result for Simon and how proud he was and how much pride he took in knowing something and being able to show that to other children, it was pretty phenomenal. So I implore you as teachers to look around and see what children are capable of doing and let them show the other children. It is really quite fascinating to sit there and watch and see what really happens. So creating a community of learners in your classroom really provides children an opportunity to construct their knowledge about the world around them and through the relationships that they have, not just between you and the teacher and the child, but between the children and among the children, and gives them a real opportunity to understand um, how the world works through the eyes of their peers. And we're just there to facilitate and to hand over the materials, right? So, hey, if you know somebody who knows how to make a paper airplane, that's fantastic, because that was one of the greatest things that I've ever seen. So I really strongly encourage you to be able to hand over the classroom to a child and let them teach the children something new and fascinating and unique. And moving on to teaching and enhancing to development and learning, effective teaching is really anchored in knowledge-rich and well-developed curriculum. So I want you to go back to think about, what are your objectives? What are your goals for your classroom? And how can I set up an environment and set up my curriculum in a particular way that is going to get children engaged, excited, motivated to be able to do, to reach those goals? You know, there's lots of goals that we have in pre-K and kindergarten. Things like, I always talk about scissors, you know, every child comes into a daycare classroom or into a pre-K classroom with a different skill set of scissors, right? Whether they've had the opportunity to have scissors at home, so they might be a little bit more versed at being able to do it, you know, or they've never seen scissors before. Or the other thing is, at 4 years old, they're still trying to figure out, are they right-handed or are they left-handed? And maybe they needed the left-handed scissors all along. And we're there to make them figure out which one is which. Scissors and being able to cut and having that kind of skill, you can do so many things, so many layers. That first initial cut is like fantastic for a child who can do it all on their own. But then if a child needs more challenge, bring in different materials for them to practice. Maybe cardboard. Cardboard is hard to cut. Maybe string or yarn that they could use to add to their art. These are all opportunities to really work on children's fine motor skills. And fine motor skills leads them to being able to learn to write. So think about all of the stuff that you have to sort of check off your box. There's always a way for children to learn how to do that in a play-based environment. So curriculum provides planned environments and experiences that support all domains of development and areas of content learning. You can bring in math in the block areas. You can bring in math in the dramatic play. You can have science at the water table. You can have social studies when you talk about community. You can have language in your book corner. You can read stories. Bring in your favorite book that you had as a child, or just your favorite storybook, and read it to children. Let them see that joy. Let them see that excitement. And when you bring in a storybook that you love, then they'll want to bring in storybooks that they love. And you'll be able to connect all of those stories with language and literacy and connections of words. These are all really important things when we're looking at supporting all of the developmental domains and also the areas of content. I tell my students all the time, bring in nonfiction books. There are some great National Geographic storybooks that you can put into your book corner that have children who would never look at a book, would go and sit in the corner and see these really cool sharks or dinosaurs or oceans, and bring that kind of material into your classroom. Find out what they're interested in. Have conversations with them. Like I said, 4-year-olds are fantastic. They have the best conversations. They really know how to really get you going with the whole thing. And just bring up the wonder, and they'll go from there. So being able to do all of those kinds of things and to support that. And remember that educators select, plan, and prepare the classroom to meet those goals. Bring out the materials. I was at a workshop not that long ago, and I thought, somebody said this, and I thought this was so wonderful. Like when they talk about materials, we're so sometimes rigid about, okay, things can have to stay where they are. I was at a play workshop, and they were talking about cross-pollinating, materials to be able to switch things up, bring the dramatic play, bring the kitchen into the reading area so that they can all make, food while they're watching books, and being able to bring different materials into the block area, being able to bring different materials into your water and sand play. These are all things that we can do that really get children to think. So think about activities that will best support the development of the children and the specific goals of learning. Like we can talk about fine motor skills, gross motor skills, getting children outside. You want children to work on their turn taking. Take out Candyland, take out board games, and get them to sit with 3 other children so that they can turn take. And they're also doing math, they're also doing colors, they're also doing all of that stuff. All of these things help you and help them to reach the goals that you need to reach by the end of the school year, so that when they do move on to K and Cycle 1 classes, that they will be prepared, but they will be prepared in a way that's authentic, that they will be prepared in a way that still brings them joy, that still gets them to think about and to problem solve and to share and to interact with other peers, and not just come to the teacher all the time, but be willing to go to peers and ask for help as well. So these are all aspects of working with the Ks and the pre-Ks, and the Ks to help them develop what they need to move on to Cycle 1. So, and all of this supports the development of the children and the specific goals for their learning. So keep all of this in mind. I talk all the time with my students about being an intentional educator, and this is exactly what it is. Bringing out the materials. Yeah, your classroom's going to look a little messy. It's supposed to. It's all part of it, right? So we want children to be able to explore, to be able to problem solve, to be able to make choices, to make those decisions. All of those things take place when we allow children to have authentic and extended periods of playtime. So the whole idea that it says in the Quebec in the Quebec curriculum program, that it's free play, it's not really free play. It's an opportunity for children to work on all of their skills. So I think if we can change the mindset for that, then I think it really helps you to be able to set up your classroom accordingly. And just kind of shifting to the whole idea of a preschool mindset. Ask the educators to think about play-based curriculum that excites and engages children at each child's developmental level. Going back to the idea of being developmentally appropriate. Thinking about each child in your classroom, thinking about each activity that you're going to do. Who are you doing it for? Why are you doing this? And how can I set up my classroom or the activity experience in a way that helps my weakest student, but also challenges my strongest student? We have to look at developmentally appropriate practice. We have to recognize what is common, what we know about child development. We have to look at each individual child And we have to be able to look at them from a particular context. Where are they coming from? What is their culture? Is their first language English? Are they coming from a daycare setting? Are they coming straight from home? Maybe they didn't have the same kind of experiences as some of the other children. How do we set up the environment, the curriculum, and our goals to meet each child's needs? And as educators, we have to learn to work beside children. We don't teach to them, but we teach with them. Educators learn to scaffold. We need to facilitate, and we have to engage children in their own learning. And it's about creating a community in your classroom that everyone, teachers, the integration aides, as well as every single student in your classroom has a say. Sit down at circle time, have a conversation with the children, find out what it is that they're interested in. And that every child in your classroom feels valued, and that most importantly, that every child in your classroom feels safe and heard and understood. Because when we talk about Ks, we talk about pre-K and K, we talk about the 4s and the 5s. This is what they are learning about what school is all about. And school has to show that, our responsibility back to these children is that we have to give them activities that are joyful. We have to give them experiences that they feel that they're challenged, but at the same time that they can be successful, that they can be safe, that they're okay in this classroom no matter what they bring to the table, good behavior, bad behavior, any of that, and that they are valued, that they bring something to the community of learners, and that there's a level of equity there, that everybody feels equally part of that. So as we shift and enrich our mindset about early childhood and the early childhood experience, I think it's really important that we see it from a different lens. We see early childhood and 4s and 5s in a different lens, that we are setting the foundation for children's learning. And we're setting these goals by setting up environments and activities and curriculums that meet the needs of every child from where they're coming from. And that we're creating this environment of wonder and expression and joy, so that laying that foundation for lifelong learners. We want children to be excited about going to school. It's not just about getting the new shoes and the backpack. We want them to be excited to learn, to be excited about math, to be excited about reading, to be excited about all that. And we start by starting with the 4s, being excited about reading them a book. One of the ways that I get my students hooked is they go into a stash, and the first thing they do is they sit down and a child brings them a book and says, "Read me the story," right? That connection. That's what we're looking for. We start with that, and then we move on with the goals, and then we move on with the learning, and get everybody to come together and teach us how to either build paper airplanes or whatever it is that we are doing. Okay, and so I just want to say thank you very much for letting me come and give you this workshop. I know that time is very precious for most of you, for all of you, and to give up an hour is very precious. So I do appreciate this. I hope that you have taken away something. Chris is definitely has a video of this. So if you have to go back, I know sometimes I can talk a little fast. But you have all of the PowerPoint presentation there, all of the information, and I would love to hear from you guys if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Donna. That was some really wonderful words. Exciting. I feel like invigorated. Want to go out
I hope
and
so.
play with
I
kids.
I know it's the end of the day on a Tuesday, but I was hoping for a little enthusiasm.
Well, we got a question in the chat. I'll throw your way.
Sure.
And then if anybody else wants to ask a question, feel free. You just have to turn your mic on and ask away. Jimmy Quinn, interesting question. So if hands-on teaching and the educators teach beside the child and not to the child is the focus in preschool, why do we move away from centered after preschool?
Why do we move to sort of a teacher-based?
Yeah.
That is a very good question. I do not know. The whole concept of early childhood, right, is to teach with the children, to be able to facilitate and to be able to scaffold. That can still take place in cycle 1 and cycle 2. All of that can take place in all of the educational system. We're sort of stuck in this, I need to teach in front of the class, right, kind of idea. And I feel that children don't necessarily, not all children can relate to that. Lots of children need this hands-on, active, authentic learning to really have it stick. They need that emotional connection. Why it's still the way that it is, I don't know. It's funny because we talk about it all the time, about how things need to change and how we need to do more, project-based learning. We need to do more hands-on learning. We need to get children involved in their own learning. And then it doesn't happen. It does happen in early childhood. I will tell you that for sure. In early childhood, from 0 to 4, in a daycare center, it is hands-on learning. And then something shifts where in the educational system, we feel like we need to teach to the children and not with the children.
Some have suggested that it might be, getting the kids ready for school, I'm doing air quotes.
Well,
That's the process of kind of getting them acclimatized to rows and worksheets and the right answers, and where it really moves away from what the preschool program is saying, where it is not a preparation for cycle 1, it is its own thing, where you're getting the kids ready to be learners rather than ready to comply.
We want them to be lifelong learners. We're not necessarily, like, I use the example of fine motor skills so that children can hold a pencil to be able to write. I talk about math and all, but all of these things can also take place in a 2-year-old classroom. It can also take place in a 4-year-old, in a grade 2 classroom or a grade 4 classroom. Materials that children can actually learn from stick more than worksheets or standing in front of or rote learning. So the more that we're doing that, preparing, now I'm going to get controversial on you, Chris, preparing children for school. How can we prepare school for children? Right? So the way that children learn, we know the research tells us that the best way that children learn is through play. And some of the best educational systems in the world only start children actually academically sitting at desks and everything, and that whole academic process at 7 and 8.
Right. And so, we've been exploring the outdoors as well with our youngest learners, and we're seeing a lot of those benefits as well, getting the kids outside into nature's classroom and
classroom. One of the things, again, talking about even the idea of risky play. Children will not go past what they are capable of doing. They will only go so far up the tree until they're like, I think I'm done. They'll only go a little bit further into the monkey bars I'm done. And then they'll keep trying and they'll keep trying. Those processes are really, really important for children to learn. We're setting them up to be lifelong learners, not necessarily for the academics of it. We want them to love learning.
Yep.
And if you love learning, you will be able to pick up on school very well.
It connects really well with the point you made about saying yes. Like, we're not there to prevent, we're not there to say, no, you can't do that. No, you shouldn't be doing that. We're here to say yes, 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 yes. And in those yeses, the development happens, right?
Absolutely.
It's really quite fascinating. We've
Yes.
had some nice comments too in the chat too. I'll save the chat for you. But I wanted to see if anybody else had any other questions. That if you want to just turn your mic on and ask a question, they're more than welcome. There's some interesting comments in the chat as well.
So I like Heidi's comment. If we spend our time preparing them for the next grade level, they will never meet the objectives of where they are now. Absolutely.
Well said, Heidi.
Yeah, absolutely, Heidi. I think that's absolutely. When we're preparing them, we're not preparing them. We're giving children opportunities to learn on their own, to figure it out, to make choices, to make decisions, to problem solve, to figure out time management, to go into the playground. Chris, you're talking about outdoor play. I mean, some of the best playgrounds would probably make some educators lose their mind. They have wooden pallets and big stumps, and they have
tires
and tires and all this great stuff, and they have to learn to work together. They have to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, Chris, help me, I need help with this ladder. And the next thing you know, they're learning how to enter into play, or to ask for help, or collaborating, or problem solving. And that's what education is supposed to be, right? And so when we talk about that kind of stuff, yes, we're preparing them for learning, but we're not necessarily teaching them 2 times 2.
Right. There was another interesting comment too about maintaining a certain class size as well, to be able to facilitate the kinds of environments. I think some teachers, their classrooms can be too large, right? And it's hard to keep check of everything that's going on.
Yeah. And I'm seeing that also in the daycare centers. In the daycare centers, in the 4-year-old classroom, they can have up to, depending on how many educators, they can have up to 24 children in a classroom. So it kind of looks like a large pre-K classroom as well, I would think, right? Around 24, 25.
Right.
The difference is there's 3 educators in that classroom, as opposed to only 2 in an elementary school.
Right.
So you're right, there is, but I also have to say, if your classroom is set up in a particular way, and the children are engaged and they're busy and they're excited to be there, there's minimal guidance, there's minimal issues that you're going to have to contend with, especially if there's enough materials for each child to be able to work with. When I used to have these large classrooms, I used to do things in like 10s, so the other educator would take the children, or they would do free play, and then I would take 10 at the art table, or I would take 10 for some activity. Circle time was always a bit chaotic because there was a whole bunch of them, but I'm also the teacher that didn't mind the students jumping in and saying, hey, what about this and what about that, and like, I have a dog too, and
right.
So all of those kind of situations would take place, and so
it's interesting too. I wanted to take a note on this too, that Miss Mindy mentioned that with this new program we have 2 years also, right? Well, hopefully 2 years with the 4s and 5s, and that cycle, again, similar to our elementary and high schools, the kids have 2 years now, right? There's not a distinction between year 1 and year 5.
This is not kindergarten 4. And then cycle 1. So,
right,
and
which is really awesome.
And ideally, and I know this, I say this ideally, and I know the comment chat's going to go crazy, but ideally, it would be great if we could have looping, where the educator and the teacher stay with the 4s, move on to the 5s, and continue the process. Now, I know. Okay, I know.
Are you
You know,
starting a
don't shoot the
revolution here?
messenger, but I'm just saying, imagine, you know, starting where you left off and being able to have the children continue. You've already built that effective relationship. You've already have that community of learners. You already have these, like, this great group of children, and now you just get to continue the learning, the process of it. And the importance of that looping is just, it's phenomenal. I know in some daycare centers that they do move up with, like, at least 2 years
Right.
with the children, so that there is that continuous learning that takes place.
Definitely
I know it's not the
something to
system that we
ponder.
have, but and I do sometimes live a little bit in the la la land of make believe, but I think something like that would be very important.
Well, I just want to thank
I
you,
have a
Donna.
circle time question.
Oh,
I want to see the circle time question. I know we have to
you
go.
want to read it out loud to us?
Yeah. So for circle time, would you suggest assigning seed or free choice? What about how they, so thank you, Miss Lenora. Thank you so much for this question. Children need to move to learn. So if they're squiggly and wiggly at circle time, it's mean that they're actually learning. But they're going to get up, they're going to stand up, they're going to move around, they can sit down, they can lie down, they can be on their knees, they can crisscross applesauce, do it all. Whatever works for them is fantastic. I remember the year I worked in the toddler classroom, I used to start a circle time, and the toddlers would walk away, and then they'd come back, and then they'd walk away, and then they would come right back. They got the story, they loved the story, but they had to leave and come back. For children to learn at this age, they need to move. So yes, do not give them assigned seating. You know, yes, you are going to have to deal with, and I can't see, but you will be able to negotiate and move. And this is where it all becomes a learning process. It's a teachable moment. Well, ask him to sit on his bum so that you can see. These are all processes. So thank you for the circle time
Good question.
I love that. Thank you.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Donna. I mean, this was really great. I hope that everybody is leaving with something. I put just an evaluation in the chat. I'd love it if you guys could give us a little feedback. We are looking to do another 1 or 2 of these webinars, April, May, and we'd love for you to have an input as to what we talk about. So feel free to fill that out, and we'll have a good look at it. I really appreciate, Donna. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I think this is very exciting. I would love to see more collaboration between early childhood and what's going on in early childhood and what's happening in the schools, because I find that there's a bit of a disconnect between the two of us. And wouldn't it be nice to have a little bit more of a blend for the children?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll all try to keep venturing in the direction. If you signed up for this, if there's another webinar, you can expect an email with an invite. We're going to start a network here. So if you don't want to attend any, you don't want your email on the preschool mailing list, just send me an email and I'll take it off, no problem. No offense taken. I want to thank Leanne also and Marina that helped with the prep for this presentation, who are also on the Play Committee. I want to give a shout out to them for giving us some time. And the rest of you, courage, keep the faith. We're doing the best that we can, and the best that we can is great. And these little kids deserve a great start, and I think that we're heading in that direction. So have a great evening, everyone, and be safe if you are traveling, and just be safe. I hope that you're all doing well out there.
Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. I do really appreciate it. And thank you for showing up at the end of the day.